Hey everyone, this is Daniel.
And I'm Jun,
And we are
Korean.
American. Good afternoon, Jun.
Good afternoon. And it is an anomaly that we're recording. We're recording on a Monday, but we're recording on a afternoon.
Yeah, not super early and not super late.
Yes, this
middle
is
of the day.
perfect. This is how we
Goldilocks.
used to do it, right? In the very beginnings.
Back when we both were jobless.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good.
Yeah, it's
I
so
think-
relaxed.
I think it's gonna be a great episode today.
Yeah,
Because most of the time, we've mentioned this before, but we mostly meet at 7:45
yeah,
a.m.
super early.
So it's like right after I get out of bed, I take a shower and then I start recording.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very relaxing.
Or very late after a whole day. And
yeah.
we're both probably very tired.
What's your preference if you had to choose one?
Between those two?
Yeah.
Early morning. Yeah.
Early morning's better, right?
But late at night's easier for my household.
Yeah.
Because the kids are asleep. So
You remember that there was this one day where we recorded in the morning and then we recorded in the evening again?
I do not remember we did that. I believe you. I just don't remember.
Wait, there was an episode where we stitched the two together.
Oh yeah, we finished it later.
Was that one day?
I think so.
That was pretty tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, look how dedicated we are.
Yeah, but today is what's the official term? Substitute holiday in Korea.
Oh, the substitute holiday is called 대체휴일.
No, 대체. Today's called a 대체휴일, isn't it?
I think it's called an 임시공휴일 because it's
Oh.
not a substitute for anything.
Oh, that's why I was confused.
Yeah, they just made it a holiday because it was like a squeezed weird day, one working day.
I think Koreans are also a bit confused about what to call it.
Yeah.
Because I've heard many Koreans refer to it as 대체휴일.
Yeah.
As substitute holiday, but
Yeah.
it's not. It's an additional.
I think
holiday.
technically it isn't, right? Because it's
It's not. Yeah.
it's not. Yeah, it's a 임시. It's a temporary holiday.
Temporary, like one off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for our audience, I don't think it was that long ago, 2-3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Korean government just randomly decided,
Yeah.
okay, well, Seollal, so Lunar New Year,
Yeah.
falls on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this year.
Yeah.
Let's just give everyone Monday off too.
Yeah. It's like you guys had a tough December.
Oh wow, you think that was a part of it?
I mean, it could be, right?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your initial impression when you first heard, oh, we're getting Monday off in 2 weeks?
Well, my immediate impression was like awesome because I fly out tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, you had booked this trip before you found out Monday was
Yes.
day off? Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
I mean, I was going to work anyways, but it was kind of cool. Then my next reaction was, who made this decision? Because
Yeah.
we have no president right
Yeah.
now. Like, who makes this decision? Because it's like a very national
I know.
level decision to make.
For
right?
me, it feels like a big deal, kind of last minute,
Yeah.
to just give the whole country a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Interesting how governments work. Maybe there is some authority that can make a national holiday without the approval of the president.
Yeah, but
Right.
Maybe thinking that the country has been through a tough December and January.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of that angle, but that makes some sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, because Lunar New Year is this week, and we're in the middle of a 6-day consecutive days off, including weekends. So I think a lot of people are taking Friday off and then having a 9-day stretch of no work.
I have Friday off. It's the first time in my family history that we're going on a trip in Seollal
Yeah.
together. And I think it's to celebrate my father's 70th.
70th.
Yeah,
Oh, it is to celebrate.
I think so.
You said. How can you think so, June?
Because it's not technically his birthday. His birthday was last year, December.
Oh, okay. So it's a delayed 70th birthday celebration.
Well, it was like it was a combination of many different things because my brother and I were supposed to go to Tokyo anyways. But then they were like, why don't we join?
Okay.
Kind of. So it became, like a prolonged, because we were going to go to my parents' house in the beginning of Seollal, and then we're going to leave in like the final 2 days or something,
Yeah.
or 2 or 3 days. But then it became like this extended family holiday. It's the first in 20 years that the
whole
four
family?
of us,
Yeah.
I am a bit nervous.
It's a long time too.
It is a long time, and they're 20 years older. I don't think I've ever traveled with very old people before. Yeah.
They're not 70s old, but not very old.
So this is what my brother told me.
Yeah.
Because my brother went on a couple of trips with my uncles and aunts before. Well, they're pretty much the same age as my parents. And my brother told me that, so there's just one rule of thumb. You cannot do more than one activity per day.
Yeah.
Is what he said.
Yeah. Yeah, bake in a lot of downtime, rest time.
Yeah.
And then maybe like solo time in a sense.
Yeah.
It's like if your parents are resting at the hotel, you and your brother can do your own things.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think bake that in and it'll be a good trip.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah, my first impression, Jun, in light of the conversations we've been having on this podcast was, Korea must be a developed country now.
Yeah, because we have off.
You're just giving days off here and there, right?
Yeah.
That.
It's like, 고생했어.
No, because you were saying growing up, right? Snow days or canceling school, that's a developed country thing.
Yes.
Right? Because you can afford to kind of lower the productivity overall.
Yeah.
And in this sense, I was like, oh, wow, they're just giving days off. This is kind of a 6-day to 9-day stretch, maybe the longest in modern Korean history, I would imagine.
Could be.
Yeah, Korea's developing in that way. I don't know.
I heard that there's another one coming up in May or something.
Another extended, like a free day off.
Very long holiday.
Oh.
Yeah. But that's not like, I don't know if there's going to be temporary holidays like this one, but I just heard yesterday that there's a very long one coming up combined with like Children's Day, whatever.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, very fitting, Jun, because at our previous employer, what the government giving this random temporary holiday reminded me of was during COVID.
Yeah.
My previous employer just started giving more days off. It's like, we're going to take this Friday off, and you have 2 extra, days off to use at your own discretion.
Yeah.
Because it was such a hard time and hard period for people. That's what it reminded me of.
Oh, they did that?
Yeah.
Oh, that was so nice of them.
Anyway, it got me thinking, and I think I've been wanting to talk about this topic for a long time. But I wanted to talk about COVID-19.
Yes.
And how Korea and America differed in their responses to COVID. Really, I just want to know what the experience was like for you in the earliest days.
Yeah.
Because actually, when I moved here, Korea was still in COVID restriction lockdown.
When did you move exactly?
We visited once March 2021.
March 2021.
Yeah, we visited. Okay, we did our 1-month vision trip, March 2021.
Yeah.
And then we formally decided and moved here, one-way ticket, end of July 2021. So,
okay.
So, it was about a year into it. But yeah, when we first landed, it was still COVID.
Oh, so July 2021 was like, I think it was at the peak of the COVID era. Yeah, restriction.
Really? No, it was a year after though. July 2020 would have probably been peak.
No, not July 2020.
Really?
Yeah, because I think the real peak hit kind of later for Korea.
Oh.
Because they were like managing it pretty well in the beginning phases.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know
but
that.
Then like it went out of control, and then like the second wave hit 2021 July-ish.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah,
so we moved during peak.
So I did like light research for the timeline. It said level 4 social distancing measures starts July 9th, 2021.
Oh wow,
which
yeah.
was
So
like
it started right before you landed here.
Yeah.
That was awful. We'll get into it.
Yes.
But yeah, let's talk about COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. So where do you want to start?
When did you first found out about, or like, when did you describe the first time you knew about this virus?
Yeah. So I think I had heard inklings of it. I think I recall actually hearing the word COVID or coronavirus or something as early as December 2019, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that early.
I remember hearing it. Sorry.
Okay. At the time in Korea, it was called the Wuhan 폐렴, like Wuhan.
Oh, the Wuhan
pneumonia.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had first heard a reference that early, but honestly, it's kind of, I was looking back at the timeline too in my light research. In the U.S., I think the first reported confirmed case was January 21st of 2020 in Washington State, and me living in California.
2020?
January 2020.
Oh, so it was a day after Korea, because January 20th is the first case confirmed in South Korea.
Yeah. And I remember, I think the news was saying like inbound plane from China or something like that. But yeah, it was, I remember at least hearing about it because in California, Washington State's quite, close. And actually, I think the first case in California came maybe just mere days after that. And then there was the first confirmed COVID-19 related death in California in February 6th of 2020. So at that point, of course, it was in the news, but no one was really, I think everyone was kind of wait and see. Like, I didn't feel like my day-to-day was impacted at all. And I was, of course, aware of it, but not really thinking about it.
Yeah.
At least for me, there's two big things I'll call out. One was my sister-in-law's wedding. She got married in Southern California on March 6th. And then she flew out for her honeymoon the next day, March 7th. And anyway, if you know anything about the timelines here, the country started to shut down. Flights were being canceled in the following week. So she kind of barely made it out to her honeymoon.
Yeah.
And then she got stranded somewhere in Southeast Asia on her honeymoon.
Oh my God.
And actually stayed there
what was her destination?
I forget exactly her honeymoon itinerary, but
Yeah.
they were taking a couple, 2-3 weeks off, I believe.
But it was in Southeast Asia.
It was in Southeast Asia.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like some
No.
transit area.
But they ended up being stuck stranded there.
Yeah.
I should look that up. I think at the very least, they ended up staying there 3-4 months through the summer.
Crazy.
And I think finally made it back maybe late summer that year.
That must have been a nightmare.
But I think they're the type, they're very adventurous. They had just gotten married and they made the remote work situation work with their employers, etc. So they actually had a great time. Even this was 2020, TikTok was still, I think, pretty new overall. And, you know, they're much younger than I am. They actually had one of their, I think, TikTok videos go viral in the very early days of the pandemic. You know, so anyway, it's like one of those things. Like, oh, we flew out the day after our honeymoon, then the pandemic hit, and now we're stuck in Southeast Asia, and they just went crazy. Anyway, so that's one. I think during that wedding, I remember there was so much talk about this. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? It's growing. And then literally the following week, flights started to get canceled, and things started to actually formally get shut down. The second one, and I think this is probably where most Americans would first, COVID had first entered the psyche of most Americans, was because the NBA got canceled.
Oh.
So the Basketball Association in the US, there's very famously a French player, Rudy Gobert. He was touching everyone's microphones before a press conference, like kind of like coughing into his hand and putting it on and say, oh, don't worry, I don't have COVID. It's kind of seen as, because this is just showing how unseriously everyone was taking it at that point, March 9th. Rudy Gobert then actually tests positive for COVID 2 days later, March 11th. Like, you can't make this up. It's so ridiculous, but it happened, right? And then I think the NBA, I think within 1 day after this, they canceled all games. So the NBA shut down.
Yeah.
And I think, at least for me, that's the first time, this is like a big deal, and it's going to affect a lot of things for a very long time. I mean, effectively shutting down the NBA season, mid-season, that's crazy, right? I think it just goes to show at that time how it went from like, no one knows anything to almost, I'd say, extreme fear overnight, it felt like. And it's like, oh, like we have to do everything, shut down everything. So anyway, that was my first impression and first earliest recollections of COVID-19. And I'd say, again, that NBA thing for me and a lot of Americans was when it first kind of made like, oh, wow, like this is impacting our lives in a major way.
Yeah.
How about you, Jun? How about Korea?
The first time that I realized and really impacted me personally is I know exactly the day. Not like I don't know the date, but it was like January of 2020.
Oh, that early?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was about to go on a business trip to Japan at the time. And then, so I was about to fly out on a Monday. But then there was still news about like this like Wuhan pneumonia that's going on in China.
Yeah.
And there wasn't any cases in Korea yet. But then they were saying particularly airports are a place that you want to avoid because you have a lot of like international people there. So you might get it there.
Yeah.
But it was like still like kind of, it felt very remote to me. It's like it was just on the international news.
Yeah.
It didn't really affect us domestically yet, at least for me. And so it was a Sunday, so the day before leaving, and I packed everything, and my boss messages me, and she was like, I think you should cancel your business trip.
Oh, okay.
And at the time, I still felt like, oh, it's like so ho들갑, like she's overreacting to this. Like, I think it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think I can still go. Because I think it was a very needed business trip in my mind.
It was like an important one.
I think so. So I wanted to go. But then she kept on telling me, no, you shouldn't go.
Oh.
So that was like my first impression and impact that COVID gave to me personally. And then January 20th is, again, the first confirmed case in South Korea.
January 20th.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about, what did I say? Oh, just about the same time.
Yeah. And I don't know if I wanted to get into this now.
Yeah.
But in the very early phases of COVID, I think Korea has like a bit of know-how and like the way to go about these very infectious diseases from I think SARS, or it was like
MERS, right?
MERS or
Middle
SARS
Eastern
or before
Respiratory,
that.
whatever, yeah.
They tracked every case very meticulously, and that kind of worked at the time. So they were trying to do the same thing.
It was contact tracing, right?
Yeah, it's like case number 1, case number 2. Like, this might sound mind-blowing for an American to listen to, but you know, like those emergency alert messages that you get for like natural disasters or whatever, we got it like yesterday for heavy snow or something. They blasted that out to the entire population of Korea.
Oh, wow.
Giving exact movement routes of this person.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like this person at like something day, like 1 p.m. they were here, and then like they moved to this place.
Oh,
like
so
2 p.m.
by the time I had landed like a year and a half after this, those were going on for sure.
Yeah.
You're saying those were instituted as early as the first cases?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So from the very beginning, the government had both the infrastructure and experience to blast, text alert messages.
Yeah.
And to be clear for the audience, these are not text messages. They take over your phone as a pop-up.
Yeah.
It's, on the internet of the 90s or whatever.
Yeah.
Those annoying interstitial pop-ups that you have to dismiss. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
It takes over your whole phone.
Yeah. Oh, they have those in the States too, right?
Do
I'm pretty
they?
sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did it for like, let's say the LA wildfires. I'm pretty sure they did.
I don't remember getting these. The only one I'm aware of, they're called Amber Alerts in the case of like a child kidnapping. And I do think maybe it takes over your phone.
Yeah.
But they were not used very frequently.
Okay, there are ones that would alert your phone regardless of your phone setting with like a large sound. That one's pretty serious.
And
it wasn't
buzzes,
it wasn't that, I think.
Okay.
But it was like a nationwide blast
Got it.
of notification. Anyways, isn't it mind-blowing to know that of course they anonymized, is that a word? Anonymized.
Yeah.
Anonymized the person as like case number 1, case number 2, but they did reveal the exact route of where they were at what specific time. Funny anecdote.
Oh no. I know it's coming.
You know what I'm going to say? You know
You
what I'm gonna
matched to one of the cases?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
At May of 2020, when there's still like the number of cases wasn't explosive, so they can still track people. There was a case in one of the gay clubs in Itaewon, and there was a case there, and they blasted out this person's exact route that they went through, like the Itaewon, like that area.
Yeah. Wait, but how did you know? Did they the notification wouldn't have said like gay nightclub, right? But it gave the name of the
I don't know, but on the internet, everyone kind of knew. So it was like big news. Everyone like, oh, this person. And that person was living in Bundang. And so it was like kind of like a gossipy thing. Yeah. But to think about it, it's like so ridiculous that you can announce this to everyone. Like, it would never happen in the States, right?
I think so. That's like a huge invasion of personal privacy.
Yeah. Also, I know one of my personal friends, he runs a startup. They had like, do you know what MWC is? Like the mobile something conference that's like a really big one.
Mobile World Conference.
Yeah, in Barcelona.
Yeah.
So huge. they went there to visit the conference, and they were like one of the very early cases in Korea. And he told me what like he went through.
Oh, they got COVID at MWC.
Yeah.
And when they came back to Korea.
Yeah, it was like the very early cases,
January.
Yeah, within like 20 cases, 20 first cases.
That's crazy.
And he told me like the exact measures of like how they were treated and stuff like that. Number one, they were like isolated in like whatever you call it, the umapshi, like negative pressure cells.
Or like a clean room environment.
So like the ventilation wouldn't interfere with the other spaces in the buildings or something. So they were completely isolated, separated. And at the time, they didn't even know what this disease was, and no one knew what repercussions of what it is. And so they all thought that they were gonna die.
Oh yeah, wow.
And they were alone.
That's so sad.
They couldn't meet anyone.
Yeah.
And so like imagine the trauma that they would have
Totally.
went through. Yeah. Anyways, that was the very early days of COVID.
Okay, Junior, I think the second after it made like national headlines, NBA being canceled, things started to move very quickly. I'd say at least in California. So again, this comes down to like federal, countrywide mandates and regulations and guidances. But at the same time, every state in the US is also empowered to do their own set of things.
Yeah.
And because California was kind of, the first known death in the US had happened in Santa Clara County, very close to where I was living. I think March 4th, 2020 is when Gavin Newsom, then governor of California, declared a state of emergency in the state. And then 2 weeks after that, roughly March 19th, that's when California instituted the nationwide. They were the first state in the U.S. to declare mandatory stay-at-home orders. So basically, you have to stay at home except for essential activities, which either you were an essential worker, right? You were like a firefighter, you were a policeman, you worked at a grocery store, or you were a doctor, nurse, etc. You worked at a hospital, or you need to go get groceries to live, right? So yeah, March 19th, I think that's the second time it started to really impact everyone because you were just told to stay at home. Overnight, at least my company and every company in California had to deal with, okay, well, how are we going to keep working?
Yeah.
So that's when we went fully remote.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, after that, very quickly, things started to get really crazy.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I remember is there was like a run on toilet paper and like essential supplies.
In the office?
No,
at home?
At any supermarket, at Costco.
Oh, I know.
It was just it was crazy.
Yeah.
And I think
like a panic run.
Exactly. It revealed some of the hysteria that could happen when something like this, in general.
But then why toilet paper out of everything?
That's kind of an essential good, right?
But like, wouldn't you want to get food and water?
This is how Americans think, maybe, June.
Oh.
It's very natural for me. Water and toilet paper. Those are like maybe two of the things.
Interesting.
But yeah, you're right. If you stop and think about it,
Yeah.
it's not the most essential good. But it did seem very natural to me that those would be the things that there was a run on. But I was going to say, I think in the US, I often contrast US and Korea. Like US has this abundance mentality, right? It's not like we're all competing over the same limited resources.
Yeah.
There's always more, the pie is very big, right? So whether it's competing in business or, against each other for jobs, there's always more jobs in a sense.
Yeah.
So I think US in general has an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
It's not a scarcity. And so I think it limits that really crazy competition over every last spot, right? And whether it's in a school or in a job or whatever. But this is when it became very clear when it comes to like this kind of situation. The US definitely pivots towards like a more scarcity mindset, zero sum, like me versus you.
Yeah.
So people would be like fighting and arguing over whose water that is, like whose toilet paper that is. Everyone's hoarding for themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so it just makes you realize like, yeah, that innate nature is going to be there for sure. But it was very kind of, let's say, reared its ugly head in that time when no one really knew what was happening or how long this would go on for.
Yeah.
And people were just hoarding like crazy.
Sorry. I think you can witness that in America during Black Friday.
Oh, that too.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, but imagine that, except for the Blockbuster or Doorbuster TV sales or whatever. But for every last thing.
Yes.
Like this is probably the only time in my life I've been to a supermarket and the whole store was literally just empty. It's kind of eerie.
Yeah.
So yeah, we of course transitioning work from home, etc. That was a big transition.
Yeah.
Additionally at this time, right, schools were closed. So I think COVID was hard for everyone, but if you were a parent with young kids at home trying to manage them and trying to work remotely, it was just a nightmare. So I believe it was March. In hindsight, it seems early. Maybe it was April, maybe it was May. But very quickly, I think my wife and I were like, hey, this is not going to work. This is madness. So, we decided, my wife left the workforce at that time and just to help with things at home. So these were the following 2-3 months after I think COVID first started to become widespread. And it was, again, in hindsight, just kind of crazy. Yeah. I don't know. What did it look like for you after the very first initial cases?
Yeah, definitely the work from home thing was definitely new for the Korean workforce as well, especially because I was working in tech. I think it was we were more adaptable to that situation.
Yeah.
And like with help of, remote working technology like Zoom or whatnot, it went pretty smooth. That was very fortunate
Really?
for us because we're working in tech and also because I don't have kids maybe. I don't know Korean parents might have went through similar things as well.
Do you recall where schools shut down as well? Probably. They must have been, right?
Yeah, they did.
They were.
They transitioned to remote, like whatever schooling too. Yeah, it was and for me personally, I just started my new work, or I was about to start my new work when COVID happened.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
so you're transitioning jobs.
I was supposed to relocate to London. And then that's when COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then everything sort of stopped, the relocation process.
Yeah.
But I had to like onboard anyways. So they like made an exception for me to onboard cross-border.
Okay.
Like, so cross-border remote working is like a complete different story from just remote working as well, because it has a lot of like tax issues and like time zone issues as well. So I was supposed to work at London.
What a disaster.
So I onboarded in Korea remotely, and like the time zone difference was like kind of crazy.
London's brutal from here. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the time, that was still like, I think mid 2020-ish.
Okay.
So that was like when...
Sorry, is it like spring? We're not approaching summer yet, right?
Not summer yet.
So this
I think
is like
it was
still
spring-ish.
late winter, early spring.
If I remember correctly. Or spring to summer-ish, I think, is when I joined.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But anyways, at the time, the global landscape of COVID control was that the Western world was like almost mayhem. Whereas like the Asian, like especially Korea, they were handling it very well. Like we really took pride in like
cases per
our quarantine and whatever. We call it like the K 방역. We branded as like the K.
What's 방역 stand for?
Quarantine.
Oh, K quarantine.
Like the K quarantine. Like we were so proud of the fact that, look at all these Western, like the more developed countries. They're struggling and we're like doing very well.
Yeah.
And at the time in my mind, especially in London, it almost felt like London is going to just disappear. Like they're almost doomed because there were so many cases.
Okay.
And because at the time we still didn't know again what the repercussion of this virus is like, and there were so many death cases.
Yeah.
And my parents were concerned that I would eventually go to London.
Yeah.
And like even if I go, I will stay I will stay isolated in my house, and that situation felt so gloomy and miserable.
Yeah.
But thankfully, the company like made an exception for me to onboard and work a little bit cross-border remote work, which was its own issue.
So at this point, the plan was still for you to eventually move to London.
Yeah.
But for now, because of all the issues with COVID and all that, you were working remotely.
To be clear, we didn't know.
Okay.
Because they were announcing new measures monthly.
Yeah,
so we didn't know how long it's going to be extended.
I see.
And I think it was at around October-ish when the company announced that everyone has to relocate to their base location.
Got it.
And the expiration date was like 2020, of December or something.
I see.
End of year.
So you had like October, November, so 3 months basically.
Yeah.
To decide whether you were going to relocate to London or, find a new job basically.
Yeah. So after long speculation, and at the time, I think if I go back, knowing the knowledge that I had that time,
you might have moved, right?
No. If I knew the knowledge that I have now, then I might have moved.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So at the time, I think that was the most reasonable choice that I can make.
That makes sense.
I think.
But definitely COVID played a big part. The uncertainty around it played a big part in you deciding not to relocate to London at that point, right?
But so I had no other choice than to depart the country.
Yeah, and find
the
a new
company.
job.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if I were to Let's just, I mean, we can fast forward through the summer months. Let me see if there's anything interesting here. Okay, let me just move on to this next, let's say, middle of that year, 2020, to catch up to where you were towards the end of 2020. April 3rd is when the CDC officially recommended that Americans wear cloth face coverings in public settings where social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. Yeah, so April 2020. Actually, it says May 8th is when California moved into stage 2 of its reopening plans.
Yeah.
So already early summer, let's say 2020, they were starting to reopen things. It says some retail businesses could offer curbside pickup. But yeah, I remember that time. It was so crazy, right? If you got like an Amazon package, you like kept it outside, tried to like sanitize it. You were supposed to wear gloves and coverings.
Oh, wow.
Unbox it, and then bring it inside and leave all the coverings outside.
Crazy.
Yeah, I think every household varied with how strict they were. But we still had no clue how deadly this was.
Yeah.
Cases, like you said, in the US were just continuing to go up and up and up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make light of it, right? We'll talk about it at the end more. But there were over 1 million COVID-related deaths in the US.
Yeah.
That is a lot. Like, I'm not trying to make light of this. But at the time, we didn't really know much about it. So, yeah, I just remember this time was really crazy. But yeah, June 12th, 2020 is when California started to reopen in-dining restaurants, bars, gyms, etc. And then July 2020, there was a surge in cases. So California rolled back some things, right? This was just a month after they started to reopen. So yeah, I think, again, the regional stay-at-home orders in California maintained through January 2021. So that's finally when they started to lift the mandatory kind of stay-at-home orders. So not quite a year, but almost. And I would say, just to catch up to you, when you were deciding like between October and December whether you need to move to London, etc., that's also when it started to hit my wife and I. Like it really started to get, what's the right word? Stir crazy a bit. And I think that's when we were like, what's going to happen in the future? We looked to Asia and Korea as, wow, they're really handling, let's say, COVID much better.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's masking up, right?
Yeah.
There's no mask controversies, which we can get into.
Yeah.
There's no vaccine controversy, it feels like. Maybe we need to move to Korea at that point. Not necessarily to flee COVID, but that it played a factor.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll get into more of the other factors too at this point. So yeah, it wasn't just COVID that was pushing us to think about leaving the US for a season. We never thought it'd be permanent, right?
Yeah.
But I think it corresponded to this rise in like anti-Asian American hate overall.
Oh yeah, that thing, yeah.
Right. If you remember, I think President Trump at the time called it the Kung Flu.
I forgot. That was another major reason that I didn't want to move to London.
These race wars, right?
Yeah.
So this heavy anti-Asian, specifically anti-China sentiment related to COVID, right, was bubbling up in the US too. That time was just kind of madness. Yeah, June also, this was that summer, right? Everyone's stuck at home for 3, 4, 5 months, right? This is when the George Floyd murder, police brutality, the BLM protests, they all were happening that summer too. So, I don't know where I'm getting at. I think COVID-19 and I think the US's response to that really showed a lot of areas that were lacking, I think. And so anyway, my wife and I had often talked about, it'd be great to move abroad and live abroad with our family while the kids are young. And so I think by the end of 2020, that's when we really started to think about it seriously. It's like, hey, this is how much longer is this going to last?
Yeah.
And to be clear, like I just said, the California, I think, stay-at-home restrictions did go away in January 2021. But at the time, right, in like December, we didn't know how much longer it'd last.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like work is crazy, home is crazy, our kids are crazy, US seems to be crazy.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the right time for us to consider, making a big move. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I also wanted to talk about the mask situation, right? Because you talked about how you said in April 2020, they first announced that.
The CDC first recommended wearing masks.
Oh, it wasn't mandatory.
It was not mandatory. I don't know when it was mandatory.
I see.
We'll get into this later, right? But in America, people take everything as a recommendation. And, anything that's quote unquote forced, whether it's masking, vaccinations, etc., It's like, well, no, you're invading my personal rights, right? Like I
Yeah.
should be able to decide for myself. But yeah, anyway, I know masking was much better handled in Korea. Yeah.
I don't know exactly when it became a mandatory thing, but even before it became mandatory, people were really trying to get those masks. And you know how there are different like levels
Oh, yes,
of masks,
yeah.
like the KF or
94
whatever.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
9480. And I think at some point people, or like they announced that the mask that gives you protective measures against COVID is the KF94 one. And so naturally, like
Everyone
everyone
rushed
was
to
going to
buy
get
that.
it, and there was a shortage.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Like there were like lines and lines in front of the supermarkets to get one. Like I think at one point there was a regulation where you can't get more than like a certain amount.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the KF94 shortage was definitely a thing. Later on, it like loosened up a little bit, and I remember just getting like they call it the dental masks, where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
more light thing, but it's like easier for you to breathe through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my company graciously they got like a
Shipment.
bulk
Yeah,
of
yeah.
KF94 and they gave out to the employees. That was very memorable.
I remember at that time, again, in the US, it was hard to get access to these good masks
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
People were importing them from Asia. It's like, hey, I just got a shipment of 1,000 masks from
Yeah.
Korea. Like, if friends and family, anyone who needs them, message me, tag me, and I'll give them to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
One thing that I was very curious always when reading the international news, specifically like pictures that are taken from the US citizens, one thing very different that I noticed between Korea and America is that Koreans all bought the manufactured ones and wore those.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The disposable ones, whereas Americans, a lot of them wear like reusable like cotton.
makeshift. Yeah, 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 yeah.
What's up with that? Like,
It's
why?
because we didn't have access to.
Oh, is that
kind
the
of
only reason?
Reusable, higher quality ones.
Oh, really?
And I think the general guidance was just, here's how to. There were all these videos going around, like how to knit your own or sew your own masks, or what you can use as a mask if you don't
crazy.
have one. So,
But does it have like that protective thing?
it's better than nothing,
Oh,
but it's
I
not going to
see.
be as good as like the KF94. So,
Ah.
yeah, I remember too. We still probably at our house in California have some shoebox with
Yeah.
like 100 different masks. Right. And but most of them are just kind of regular cloth ones. It wasn't the really high quality ones.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wearing masks definitely became a culture here.
Was it a culture before COVID? Because I know two things come to mind. You said the history of like MERS and SARS,
Yeah.
like these airborne respiratory diseases. Korea had already had to deal with them. I think it was 2005 and whatever. Secondly, right, the air quality in Korea is not always good. And so when the AQI is high, I think most Koreans naturally mask up too,
I
so
see.
they don't breathe in. I don't know. What's your take on why masking was already a culture here and why it kind of would you say it went well? Like Koreans mask pretty well?
I mean, I don't think there was a prevalent culture of mask wearing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the general perception of when someone's wearing a mask, it's associated with, oh, that person is sick. I still remember when I visited Japan, I thought what was very interesting and odd is that a lot of people just wear masks in general. and I heard that it's because of they have like the pollen season at April. And so a lot of people are allergic to pollen. So wearing masks as a protective measure was their culture.
Yeah.
And like, so at the time I was working at a Japanese company. And so if I see people in the meetings and they're just like just randomly wearing masks, I can still remember that.
In a meeting?
In a meeting, yeah.
They're in the office, not at home.
Oh, in the office,
Okay.
yeah. Even before COVID.
Yeah, got it.
Like people just wear masks or like in the subway, people are just wearing masks. I thought that was very odd because in Korea, it's not like a everyday thing.
Okay.
If you're wearing a mask, it just means that you are sick.
You're sick.
Yeah. And
Even that, by the way, it's a bit different, right? Because I think in the US, people wear masks to protect themselves.
yeah,
But in Korea or Asia, it's like common courtesy. It's like, oh, I'm sick. I don't want others to get sick, so I'm going to mask up.
yeah, I think there's a stronger
Communal aspect versus
yeah.
like selfish.
Yeah. So, but now it definitely became a culture where people just wear masks for protective measures.
Yeah.
Rather than I'm sick kind of thing. Yeah.
I
So
didn't realize it wasn't already prevalent before this. Yeah.
Definitely wasn't. Yeah.
I mean, here, this is such a random cultural anecdote, but one of the like Korean movies of my childhood was My Sassy Girl. And if you remember, the delivery man, or when the guy in that movie was delivering food or whatever, he masked up. So in my mind, I'm already thinking, oh, there's already like a mask culture.
Oh, like in the piano concert hall
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Oh, I think it's just to, that
The
was just to,
incognito,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I can definitely attest to the fact that it wasn't a culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jun, let's talk about a huge kind of, what's the right word? Series of headlines in the U.S. or storylines was around the essential workers,
Yeah.
right? Specifically nurses, doctors, hospital staff, and also just how overloaded our healthcare and hospital infrastructure was during this time. Again, I think the official reports are roughly 1.2 million people died in the U.S. Related to COVID.
1.4 million.
1.2 million.
1.2
Yeah, and over 100 million reported confirmed cases overall. And I think the big storyline at the time, you know, having ourselves lots of friends in the medical industry was, hey, even our doctors don't have the right protective masks. Like we don't even have equipment for hospital workers, let alone civilians. And just how overloaded, and really some of the stories I heard during this time from our doctor friends was really, really sad and tragic. And just how many people, how critical their condition was, and how much equipment we were lacking, it seemed, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just again, I don't want to make light of this because, first of all, I can't believe it was over 4 years ago. But yeah, a lot of people lost their lives related to this in the US. But I wonder, anyway, that was like a major storyline. Just COVID, a pandemic of this scale, revealing kind of the shortages and the weaknesses in the US healthcare and medical systems. What was it like in Korea during that time, you know?
I think it was pretty similar, although I think the Korean hospital system worked better in comparison to the Western world. I don't know, for some reason they're very systematic or like very, very early on or very quickly changed to that COVID mode and very systematic in trying to approach this.
Yeah.
Definitely there were shortages of doctors and nurses and like the beds and whatever. So there were definitely very serious. It was pretty serious, and there were a lot of instances where people couldn't be treated because of the fact that there were so many COVID cases. Not only because they had COVID, but even for patients who have other things to be
because of COVID. There wasn't space for them. Same in the US.
Overall, the death toll is around 25,000.
25,000. Okay.
And then the overall cases are 1.8 million. Yeah.
In my mind, Jun, knowing how dense Korea is compared to how not dense the US is by and large, a part of it is just still shocking to me how quickly it spread across the US and why caseloads were so high.
Yeah.
Then again, you think about the lack of maybe adherence to masks, etc. But I don't know. What would you attribute to the lack of widespread cases and the low death toll in Korea?
Low death toll?
Maybe people are just healthier overall. So
is it a low death toll?
I mean, 25,000 relative to, let's say, 50 million people. US is roughly, let's say, 6 to 8 times larger. And we had 40 times the death toll, right? So, but at least proportionately.
Interesting. Do you think it's related to the vaccination?
That I'm not well researched on either.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into vaccinations.
Yeah.
So I forgot exactly which variant I got, but it looks like in the US, vaccines were first starting to be given to the high risk, let's say healthcare workers or elderly, etc.
Yeah.
Starting in end of December 2020. And then it looks like it was opened up to everyone in the US April 19th, 2021. And so I don't remember exactly, but I think we signed up and got it sometime in that time frame. I'd say April or May of 2021 is when we first got our vaccines, which is, oh yeah, this is very interesting. This was after we had done our vision trip in Korea, which I want to talk about quarantining in Korea in a little bit. But this was when we got back from that first trip to Korea, and then before we had left and actually moved here, which was later that summer 2021. So yeah, do you remember, or when did Korea start opening up the vaccine to everyone? And then, yeah, was there any controversy in Korea?
Yeah, I think it was around 2021 for Korea as well, February-ish.
Oh, February. So a
Yeah.
little earlier than the US.
Yeah.
For widespread kind of, the general population could get it as early as February 2021.
There definitely was controversies around like whether we should get it or not, but it was very less so than the States.
Yeah.
It was more about what type of vaccine is better for you.
Yeah.
Because you were just randomly assigned 3 different types of vaccines at the time, and you couldn't pick and choose. It was Pfizer, and then Moderna, and then AstraZeneca.
Oh, AstraZeneca, yeah.
And it was like, I don't know the scientific facts around vaccines, but it was like the general perception is that Pfizer is the best.
Right? Yeah, I think
and then
so.
AstraZeneca is the
worst.
It's like the least effective one,
Moderna's
right?
in the middle, yeah.
So it was like kind of like people wanted to get the Pfizer one kind of, but like you couldn't pick and choose. That was more of a thing rather than I think it was just a given. And this is the thing that we have to get into about like the collectivism mentality versus individualism. It's more about like I have to get vaccinated to not be a harm for others.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. And it was just like common knowledge that you should just get vaccinated. Yeah.
Did it ever become politicized in Korea?
No, it wasn't. I don't
see.
think. Not to the degree of the States, at least.
Oh, but to some degree it was, or?
I mean, there must have been something that I didn't realize. I can't say it for sure, but it wasn't definitely a big thing.
In general in Korea, is there an anti-vax like movement per se?
No, I don't think there was a movement.
That never happened.
There could be some individuals, but not. It wasn't to a degree where it became a movement.
Got it.
Which, okay, Korean people definitely saw international news and how Americans reacted to vaccines.
Yeah. I mean,
It's just like so comical
interesting.
To me, at least.
Comical, I don't think any American would call it comical just because it feels so serious.
Yeah.
But it does reflect a lot of issues in the US overall. So again, I'm not well researched here, but there's a lot of people who swear that, you know, the vaccination is the reason why my kid has, whether it's like some other developmental issue or whatever, you know, they're looking for someone to blame.
Yeah.
And what else is there, you know, in those early years as a baby, other than vaccinations that you're kind of injecting into young babies? So I think there's that too. But in general, it became very, I'd say, politicized. And so generally people are like, well, if you look at the incentive structure here, right, government, vaccination, companies, etc., everyone's pushing to make this required so that they can make money off of it, right, too. And so I think Americans have a general distrust of those things, whether it's the government, whether it's the pharmaceutical companies, whether it's whatever. So because of that, it's like, if I'm not absolutely sure, and if there's not decades of evidence supporting this, maybe I'm going to opt out, right? And that's my right to choose. So at least that's some of the context behind why vaccination became so polarizing in the US and remains to stay. It's still very polarizing.
Interesting. I can't speak for the entire public sentiment of Korea, but at least like if I can represent a portion of that, the way that I perceive it, and I think I can speak for the general sentiment of Korea as well. I think there's a higher trust in government or medical system in general in Korea. So I think there definitely were people who didn't trust the vaccine, but I think in my mind, I was like, oh, if the government approved it, it should be fine, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we just get it? And as a collectivist mindset, if I don't get it, I might affect other people and they might die, right?
Yeah.
So even through the measures of sacrificing even myself a little bit to this vaccine that haven't been like very effectively proven yet, I might just get it.
Yeah.
That was kind of like my mindset. And also in terms of viewing the vaccine companies is, I think, kind of different. I think in Korea, it was more like, oh, there's just like this new technology that like we didn't even know that we can make a vaccine in this
mRNA.
mRNA. That's like almost felt like a scientific miracle where you sort of inject this thing and it'll like duplicate the whatever DNA structure and then it'll create a vaccine. And this is like some cutting edge medical technology thing, and they're just gonna like fast track and improve it. It almost, to me, it felt like kind of victory for humanity and civilization. It was like, oh, this is so cool that like the human race finds a way to overcome this very quickly, rather than like this being very politicized,
pushed through and just like for personal gain.
Maybe it's because all of the manufacturers or companies are not Korean.
That's true. Yeah.
It just felt like some cutting edge medical technology thing, and they're just gonna like fast track and improve it. It almost, to me, it felt like kind of victory for humanity and civilization. It was like, oh, this is so cool that like the human race finds a way to overcome this very quickly, rather than like this being very politicized,
pushed through and just like for personal gain.
Maybe it's because all of the manufacturers or companies are not Korean.
That's true. Yeah.
It just felt like, it didn't really feel that way.
Oh, that is interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, Korea is importing these vaccines, and no one in Korea is benefiting from that directly. In fact, like governments are paying money to buy these vaccines for their citizens, right? So it's costing something very real for Korea, as opposed to the U.S. where like I think at least 2 of the 3 major manufacturers are based in the U.S. And so they're like, okay, something feels a bit off here. Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, it didn't really feel that way.
Oh, that is interesting, right? Because at the end of the day, Korea is importing these vaccines, and no one in Korea is benefiting from that directly. In fact, like governments are paying money to buy these vaccines for their citizens, right? So it's costing something very real for Korea, as opposed to the U.S. where like I think at least 2 of the 3 major manufacturers are based in the U.S. You know, in the U.S. after kind of the vaccine started to roll out, again, just as quickly as things ramped up, everything seemed to go away very, very quickly from what I can recall. I think it was May 2021. So again, just a month or 2 after the vaccine started to roll out, the CDC announced, okay, fully vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks indoors. Again, I remember it feeling a bit premature. And I think a lot of people chose to do it anyway, just to be extra cautious. But I also have to say, I remember at that time feeling like, oh, if you're wearing a mask, you felt kind of judged. Depending on the crowd, honestly. Like if you were in a group that was all masking and you chose not to mask, it's like, why are you not masking? Like you felt judged for not masking. But if you're with a crowd that was not masking and you chose to wear a mask, it really felt like they were looking at you like, hey, we don't even want you here if you're going to mask up. Right. And so that's where it feels really in a non, let's say, homogenous society. I guess people can, when depending on what they choose, they really kind of associate with that group. And so I distinctly remember both feelings depending on which group of people I was with during that time. And they were like, hey, officially the legal ruling is now we don't have to mask. Everyone ripped it off, almost celebrated in doing so. But again, myself included, I think most people were like, well, just better safe than sorry, right? So why not continue to mask? But yeah, this was going into May and the summer of 2021. And then California officially lifted its mask mandate June 15th of 2021. And then, 2022, there's still random like things happening, right? Some mask recommendations being rolled back in schools, for example. But 2022 felt like, to be clear, I was already living in Korea at this time, but it didn't feel like it was a big deal. I think by the end of 2021, kind of COVID had already blown over. Although very formally, officially, 2023 January is when COVID-19 stopped being a national emergency declaration. So this was officially May 11th of 2023. The COVID-19 public health emergency in the U.S. was declared over. But this felt more, what's the right word? Honestly, it felt more symbolic than anything. I feel like by the end of 2021, and at least if not then, sometime throughout 2022, it felt like life was back to normal. Maybe with some exceptions, which we'll get into, like remote working and things like that, which are still very much having impact on the U.S. today. But yeah, so what did 2021 and 2022 look like in Korea after the vaccine started to roll out?
I think 2021 to mid 2022 was the most severely restricted areas of COVID. And I mean, the government has specific certain systems of levels of precautions, like level 2, level 3, level 4, or something
Yeah.
like that. And it depended on the location. So I think the Seoul metropolitan area was always on a higher restrictive
yeah.
thing. And then the other outskirts of Korea and like non-Seoul areas were lower.
Wait, you're saying that was the most restrictive time in Korea?
2021 to 2022, mid
okay.
2022, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, this makes me feel better. That's actually when we moved to Korea.
Yeah.
And we had to deal with all these
Yeah, so I think
protocols,
I
et
think
cetera.
you came at the most severe time.
I had assumed it was always like that, honestly.
Oh no, it wasn't.
Oh, so we moved right at the worst time
Yeah.
for this. Both makes me feel better and kind of worse.
And at the time, the quarantine rules
Yeah.
were very specific, right? And I think this is like, again, like an individualistic society versus collectivist society thing.
Yeah.
And the government was not afraid to give very specific instructions of what to do and what not to do. And people tend to follow it they're very like obedient.
Yeah,
in
black and
general.
white in a sense, yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine something like that could be even announced in the States, what to do and what not to do. I mean, they did it a little bit for like restaurants and cafes and
Yeah.
whatnot. But anyways, at the time, the so-called 방역 수칙 quarantine rules were announced like almost like on a weekly basis.
Oh, updated. Mhm.
Yeah, because the situation unraveled like in front of our eyes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the government had to be very agile in adjusting to that. So I don't blame the government for being like that. But anyways, it was very confusing for the public of what is the current rule right now,
Yeah,
right? Because at
that's
some point it was like only 2 people at a restaurant, but like up to 4 at a gym or something.
Yeah.
And like for certain businesses, you can only operate until 9, but then there were exceptions for
curfews.
certain like norebangs you can do until like 10 or something. And so it was yeah.
No, I mean, June, this makes me feel a lot better because I
Yeah.
want to share some stories. But before I do that, the curfew never made sense to me. Like, what's with the curfew? Like, what's the value of that? Right? Because is it just to limit social outings in groups?
Yeah, I think they just wanted people to stay
Stay
at
at home.
home as much as possible.
I get it.
But they can't like do a lockdown.
Yeah.
So they just had a time limit, I think.
And that one never made sense to me. It's like, hey, I get it. Limit groups, try to social distance.
Yeah.
But you also have to be home. I don't know.
This is a sort of a side note.
Yeah.
But the thing that made complete no sense to me
Yeah.
was the thing that they plastered on top of the elevator buttons.
Oh,
The anti-germ
bacterial
thing.
Yeah.
Like, can people not distinguish between what a germ is versus what a virus is? Like, it doesn't help anything with the. Anyways, that's like kind of like a side note.
I get it.
But anyways, it was so confusing for the general public.
Yeah.
Not only because there are different measures for different locations, different business types,
Yeah.
and all that,
Yeah.
but also because it was updated weekly.
Constantly, I see.
So I was talking with my friends at work, and we were like, "Don't you think this is so confusing?
Yeah.
We just wish there was this one
Source of
place
truth,
with
right?
source of truth that has authority that shows the most updated quarantine rules at the time." So we decided to like quickly whip up like a website that constantly updates what is the exact quarantine rules that you should follow now.
Yeah.
For some, yes, it randomly kind of blew up in the internet.
Yeah. It went
community.
viral. Yeah.
I don't know if any of our listeners might recognize. It was a website called 오늘의 방역. It went pretty viral. Like newspaper companies like contacted us. Some very famous politicians whom I wouldn't name their names, but everyone would know.
Yeah.
Contacted us wanting to like talk to us, but we didn't really interview with them because we didn't want it to be very politicized. Because at the time it had like a little bit of like anti-government thing, because everyone was criticizing the government for not being super systematic about this.
I mean, ideally, the government would have produced what you built.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
by
it's-
the way, where did you pull all the different source of information from for this?
There was a website, the government website that would announce this, but it wasn't formatted, nor was it very systematically designed, nor was it very accessible.
I see.
So every time like there's a quarantine rule, what people would usually do is just search on Naver.
Yeah.
But
this
then
would
you
not come up as a topic.
But you don't know if this is the most updated rule, or it might be a rule from a week before, which is totally irrelevant now.
Yeah.
So we just like manually went into the government website and then like we input the data.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good on you, Jun. You should win some award for
should.
public service. Yeah.
That was like one of the, they wrote it on a newspaper at some point, and that was like the headlines of like, oh, the government doesn't do it, so the people,
the civilians do it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyways, that was a fun experience.
At its peak, how much traffic were you getting?
I think 90K DAU.
Like hits per day, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's huge. So Jun, actually hearing you say that was the peak of COVID restrictions in Korea makes me feel a lot better. I just want to share some of I guess I'll lead with this.
Yeah.
Talking about the rules and regulations and maybe how silly they were. And also the thing I always like to say is how Koreans are so strict about following the letter of the law, but not the spirit. Can't believe I haven't ranted about this before. I was waiting for this moment. I think the restrictions at the time were dine-in restaurant. You can only seat 4 people.
Yes.
And you have to have proof of family registration, like a document to prove that you're family.
I think at some point it was up to 2. It was to 2.
2? But at least for us, I think it was 4 with family maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it was 2 without family and 4 with family.
Yeah.
So first of all, we literally were carrying around this document that proved we were family. I don't know, that felt a little crazy to me. But beyond that, Jun, like when we were sitting down at a restaurant, they would not let the 5 of us at the time or 6 of us or whatever sit together because they were like the rules 4.
Yeah.
But the rules 4 with family, right?
Yeah.
It should have been whatever for family.
Yeah.
Maybe now that I say it, I could see abuse, like extended family. Oh, we all live together, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But literally all 6 of us are living together in one house, right? So to me, it was just so frustrating how restaurants would not let us sit together.
Yeah.
So we had to split up as a family in this restaurant, even though we're one family, one household, one roof. Right? Very clearly by the spirit of the law, they should have just been like, we get it. You're all living together. This is one family union, right? It's not extended family. It's not great parent. It's not whatever, right? It was just so frustrating. Also because every restaurant kind of was maybe enforcing it a little differently. Almost all of them were very black and white, but some were like, oh, you can't even enter the restaurant together, let alone sit at 2 tables because we know you're one family or together. That seems also crazy. It's like, why wouldn't you let us come in? We're going to abide by the 4 to a table rule.
Yeah.
But we literally were not allowed in restaurants because our family was more than 4. That whole season, I remember being so frustrated because it was still kind of early maybe in our time in Korea.
Yeah.
I hadn't quite gotten to this point of just acceptance.
Yeah.
I was like, guys, use some common sense here, please. Just let us sit together and eat. But they wouldn't. It was really, really crazy.
I think the thing about Koreans try to abide, would you say, by the letter of the law? It's because, again, Korean people are very... they're very smart in trying to find loopholes and trying to find exceptions, I guess.
Yeah.
And because of the nature of how people are so smart in trying to like
exploit these rules.
Things, I think the people who are enforcing the rules become very technical about it almost.
But here's the thing, like what's it going to harm a restaurant? If anything, they're harming themselves by not letting us come in and eat there, right? What's the harm?
If someone reports this to the government.
Who would report? I mean...
Well, competitors.
We're one family. I don't know. It was so frustrating.
Yeah.
I just also remember that time, again, if you were trying to eat with another group of people, you technically couldn't.
Yeah.
But you would pretend, you would give it like a minute or 2 in. So like, okay, your family go in first, sit down. Then 2 minutes later, we'll come in, sit down like kind of close by. You know, I guess that this one is actually breaking the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
But it felt so silly because like right outside the restaurant, you could be together.
Yeah.
But as soon as you step in, you're not allowed to be.
I mean, but you have to draw a line somewhere, I think.
I get it. But, Jun, okay, here's this one. I don't think you can defend this. This was when mask mandates were still required in Korea. So literally you'd be outside, no mask. But when you're walking into the restaurant, they literally stopped you and made you put on a mask.
Yeah.
But once you sat down at your table, you could take it off again.
Yeah.
Come on, that's just pedantic. There's no value to this.
Yeah, I think people were just trying to figure things out at the time. Yeah.
So ridiculous. Anyway, okay, I'll stop ranting about that.
Yeah.
Now let me talk about the more, I think, difficult time. So I think it was March 22. That's when my wife and I were like seriously considering moving to Korea. So we did a 1-month vision trip. And so we came with our family. But yeah, for 4 weeks, I think. We had to quarantine for the first 2 June. If I could have broken quarantine and flown back, I would have. 4 days into quarantine, I was like, this is crazy. Why are we here? This is stupid. We got to move back to the US. Or like, let's just go fly back to the US.
Yeah.
We tried to look it up. Like, it was impossible to get a plane ticket, to break quarantine, all this stuff. So we were like forced to ride this thing out.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, those first 2 weeks being in this tiny cramped Airbnb
Yeah.
was so crazy. It nearly ended us. It was so hard to survive.
That was a Korea specific thing, right?
I think the quarantine was I don't know what the exact quarantine rules were like in
Yeah.
the US, but whatever they were in Korea, they were very strictly held to. So for example, we had to have like a handler drive us to and from the airport to our residence. And then they also were required to take us to and from the test center. So we have to talk about the testing. I think we might have touched on this before. But the nose test, we call them the ko test.
Yeah.
In Korea,
Yeah.
it was so painful.
You stick it up all the way up until your brain almost.
All the way up. And for the full 10 seconds,
Yeah.
they're like, it really was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I will call it pain. It was painful. And it was to the point where, like, I've shared this story before on the pod, I remember. These test centers were very scary, right? Like behind the glass encasement, you see like 2 gloves sticking out.
Yeah.
And our kids are scream crying the whole time. We're forced to hold them still because if they move, it hurts even more.
Yeah.
So we're like physically restraining their heads against us as hard as we can.
Yeah.
While they had no mercy on kids. These things went all the way up to the brains, basically. It's like our kids are still traumatized from that. If we even mention the term co-test, I think our 2 middle ones will cry. I'm not kidding. It was so traumatizing because they required you to test as soon as you landed and then before quarantine ended. And so anyway, I think the severity of the co-test was brutal. In contrast to the US too, right? Because between this vision trip and when we actually officially moved back, moved to Korea, we had nose tests in the US too. If Korea was a 10, the US test was like a 3. It was like so gentle. They didn't go all the way up. They it was nice.
I remember that like the 7-day quarantine thing wasn't a thing in the US.
I don't remember. It might have been a recommendation, but how are they going to enforce it, right?
Because I went on a trip to San Francisco summer 2022, and I remember feeling so liberating.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have any like quarantine and people were not wearing masks and whatnot.
That contrast would have been wild.
Yeah.
I think anytime in 2022, Korea versus the US was very different. Yeah. June, when you got your vaccine in Korea, what was your proof of vaccination? Because the US was comical.
There was something that you can put into your mobile.
Yeah.
as,
Yeah,
like,
there was
a
an app
government-
that you
yeah.
officially had to get. Anyway, it wasn't an official like central database and record,
Yeah.
right? Tied to your social security number essentially.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, in the US, it was literally a cardboard card. I think I still have it.
Yeah.
With your name handwritten.
That you can just fake.
I mean, literally, there was nothing official about it.
Mm.
It was a handwritten name.
Mm-hmm.
It was a handwritten date.
Mhm.
Maybe someone scribbled some initials
Yeah.
on it. And I think they might have had the sticker for the brand, which type of vaccine you got. But that's the only thing I remember being something official.
Uh-huh.
It was like a sticker but there was no like number, vial number, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
It was just like which type of vaccine you got.
Oh, at least
was-
was it hologram?
No, dude. This is like what I would print out at my home sticker
No.
printer.
Oh, really?
It was so, and I remember everyone was just like, "What is this?
Yeah.
Like, it's not official. There's no. It's so easily faked and spoofed, right?"
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was so comical to me again the contrast between what the U.S. gave as like a proof of vaccination versus what it was in Korea. So.
I mean, I think in general, Korea has a very unique system of national identification number,
Being tied to everything.
which the US doesn't.
No, we have their social security for sure.
But I mean, I think a single person can have multiple social security numbers. No?
Correct. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Very sure.
So I have a social security number.
You might have a tax ID number.
I don't have a tax ID number.
You have a social? You have a U.S. social?
I have a U.S. social.
When did that get issued?
Early 90s.
Oh, from when you
Yeah.
had moved there as a kid.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But
Okay.
I don't think they can, if I go back and get a new social security number,
Yeah.
I don't think they can match the two numbers. Because there's no way to prove that I'm the same person.
I see. You're saying there is some way to get two socials?
Yeah.
But I promise you...
It's not that strict, is
I
what I'm
promise you
saying.
by design, it's meant to just be one.
Anyways, I do.
And
But
I also think for me, it's very hard. It would be hard for me to get a second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe because I was born there, there's like a continuous record and you have to show your birth certificate or whatever. But
Maybe it's because you're a citizen.
Yeah,
also.
exactly. Yeah.
But I think the U.S. is unique in a way that there are a lot of like non-citizens also
Living there,
working
yeah.
there, and like I feel like it's technically impossible. Like
To track every person.
how can they know that the like me who lived in the States in 1990 is the same person if I enter? I think I could have easily gotten a second social security.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that Korea
Yeah.
is very unique in that it can just very meticulously track who is who.
Is Korea unique or is the U.S. unique in its inability to track who's living in its borders?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
I think most of the world's more like Korea than the U.S., I believe.
What I'm trying to get at is that, again, this might go against the nature of the States where
Yeah.
you don't really want to be tracked
No, yeah, of course.
that way. I don't, even if the US does have the ability to do that, I don't think a lot of people would agree to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I
agree
think
with
some
that.
people would just be happy to just live off the grid a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think most people do not want to be tracked in any way.
So is that a uniquely American thing, or is this like an
interesting.
Asian thing that it is okay to track people very?
We've talked about this
tightly.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's hard. Yeah, I'd say I've switched a lot on this, as I've said on the pod before.
Yeah.
Personally, I think I'm willing to give up individual rights and freedoms, privacy, being tracked, etc.
Yeah.
If I feel like it's going to make me safer and it's
Yeah.
going to make society as a whole safer.
Yeah.
And if I trust that the institutions that have this power aren't going to abuse it. So I think all of those are satisfied in Korea. So, tying my ARC resident number to every single thing in Korea, from my cell phone to taxes to whatever, COVID vaccinations. Also, seeing CCTVs everywhere and knowing I'm being recorded at any given time. Yeah, I've said this before. I'm generally okay giving up those freedoms, right? Whereas I think when I first moved here, it made me feel very uncomfortable, I would say. Yeah. And I think for most Americans, they would be adamantly against it. Yeah.
I think this is this could be a very natural transition in talking about, personal rights, individualism,
Yeah.
and then collectivism. I think, again, like, whoa, look at the blizzard.
I know, it's really coming down here.
Whoa. Anyways, I think, of course, as it is true with a lot of things in the world, there are pros and cons.
Yeah.
I think a very collectivist society has its, goods and bads. But I think in like a pandemic situation is when a collectivist society can handle things better.
Oh,
Yeah.
heck to the yes.
Yeah. And, like as a Korean who lived in a very collectivist society my whole life, again, I use the word comical, but it was kind of, in my mindset, it felt kind of nonsensical that you would trying to claim your personal rights in expense of trying to the potential of harming others
Yeah.
was kind of difficult to understand. And also, you mentioned this briefly. There is a thing called the law, right? Where it's already kind of restricting personal laws in the goal of trying to achieve like the, I guess, certain rules of the society as a whole.
Yeah.
So where do Americans draw that line?
It's a tough question. Like, I think, as I said earlier, anytime a law impedes on your own personal ability to do something that just impacts yourself, I think most Americans would say, like, we don't need those laws, right? Whether, if let's just say drugs, right? Again, all of these are, it's hard because let's say I take drugs and I do something that's damaging to society.
Yeah.
Clearly, I've impacted society negatively, but it's like at the end of the day, the immediate impact is just to myself, right? And I think that's where it feels like, for example, drunk driving. I think everyone agrees that's bad because when you're in a car outside, you have the potential to do lots of harm. Drinking at home by yourself, should that ever be restricted? Okay, there are rules, right? At a certain age, we've decided. I suspect a lot of Americans would be supportive of removing those restrictions, right? US being Christian and generally a lot of Christians thinking drinking is bad, right? Okay, maybe they're supportive of outright banning drinking for sure on a religious basis, but purely from like an individual perspective, I bet a lot of Americans would be supportive of, no, there's no actual law against when or what age you can drink at home, right? If you're a parent and you want to give your kid beer at 5, go for it, right? I don't know. Maybe that's a bit different because I think you're not a quote unquote adult in America until you're 18, not a minor, right? So maybe the laws around like minors can't choose for themselves. So until 18, we'll have more restrictive laws. But after 18, it's up to you, right? So I think that's kind of a principle a lot of people might think. If it's just affecting me, don't regulate it. There shouldn't be laws.
But see, help me understand because in a extremely individualistic society, you might not even want to be a part of a sovereign nation. And that like being a part of a community and society is protecting the individual.
Yeah.
And even if you say that it is just like my individual act, it always has a repercussion to the society, almost always, right? Like, let's say drugs, right? You might say doing drugs at home doesn't really affect other people, but as a society as a whole, it creates a social costs where if, let's say, half the population starts doing drugs, it definitely would damage society. So there has to be some, regulation for the society to sustain itself, right? So that part is kind of hard to understand. Another case would be maybe things like euthanasia. That's like completely something that is like my own act that might immediately think that it doesn't affect other people.
No, why is that illegal in the US?
But as a whole, it does affect society if that is legalized and people start doing that, right? There is a social cost to everything.
Obviously, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, so obviously, I would say I agree with that. But I think as a principle, Americans want to impose as few restrictions as possible. So anytime maybe it's blatantly going to damage society as a whole, like let's say really bad drugs, for example, not marijuana, but others. I think Americans might say, okay, we do agree this is, even though it's an individual, even though primarily this is just impacting individuals, collectively we want to decide on this as a whole. I don't know. Of course there's limits, but I think it also, what you said earlier for me calls into question the purpose of government. Right? And this is a classic just like left versus right debate in the US. Should government do more or less? Right? So a lot of people, I think it's the maybe libertarian perspective, the only role of government should be something like controlling and protecting the borders. Right? And beyond that, not much else. I should look that up. But I really think that's like all libertarians believe.
Why do you even need a border then?
Because they have agreed, at least for us as a country, you need a border to protect who's coming in and who's coming out, right?
But see, that's already presuming the idea of a collectivist society. Like a country, like a sovereign nation is a very collectivist concept to begin with.
Oh, interesting. Hold on, let me look this up. So Jun, again, I'm not an expert in this, but I just looked up kind of through ChatGPT what libertarians believe, which is a small, but I think kind of a lot of people are fans of the libertarian system. So they actually believe the government's role is, number one, protection of individual rights. The primary role of government is to protect the natural rights of individuals. So life, liberty, and property. They believe in non-aggression. So they should prevent individuals from infringing on others' rights through violence, coercion, or fraud. They believe in national defense. So limited government role in maintaining a military to just defend the nation from external threats. They believe in law and order. So they should enforce the laws that exist, again, earlier to prevent individuals from harming on others' rights to these things. And the fourth thing here, it says they believe in the enforcement of contracts. So if two individuals do agree to something, then it needs to be enforced.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of general rule of law, but very limited laws in general.
Yeah.
And the laws are just to protect individuals' rights, again, for life, liberty, and just pursuit of happiness. And they very specifically should not be involved. The government should not be involved in economic regulation, social issues, welfare or redistribution of wealth, or education and healthcare even, right? So it doesn't quite exactly answer your question, which I think you're saying isn't even having a nation a collectivist mentality to begin with, right? It is. Now we're getting to the point of like anarchy. Does anyone believe there should be no government? I think it's just about where you draw the line. Yeah. And I think if you were to ask anyone reasonably, like, oh, if you believe in individual rights, why even have government? That's not going to resonate with most people. I think everyone agrees there should be some government. But by default or by nature, should it be very limited? And should we, every little bit of individual freedoms we give to the government, should we fight tooth and nail to keep it that way?
Oh, I wasn't really specifically wanting to get into like what the role of the government is.
Okay.
Per se, it's more about where do you draw the line of like to which extent do I try to protect my personal rights? Because, COVID was a very good example of my personal rights might harm the others.
Yeah.
And again, like what is personal rights that I can claim? Because it almost always has a societal effect, I think.
It does. I'd say like it's like this first order or second order thing. Of course, everything affects society at large. But by default, I think it's just more of a principle thing. Like, do you start off with, okay, the government can institute whatever it wants for its population that it deems right? Or do you start from the perspective of nothing, the government can't do anything in that regard?
Yeah.
Is how I would think about it.
Because in society, everything is interconnected. This might come from a very Asian mindset. Like, for instance, an apartment building, right?
Yeah.
Do you believe that individuals have the right to smoke in their apartment units?
I believe that a group of individuals can choose to decide whether that apartment they live in is smoking or non-smoking. And so if a group of smoking people want to live in an apartment that requires smoking, I'm all for them being able to do that. I don't think the city or government should say there's no smoking indoors, for example.
Oh, let's assume a hypothetical apartment where it's like the physical layout is an apartment.
Okay.
Let's say it doesn't involve government or a community. Do you think in an American mindset you should be allowed to smoke in your own unit?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But what if the smoke sort of, through HVAC, it could like infiltrate to other units as well? Can you still smoke because it's your own unit?
Yeah, then I think, again, this is where it makes sense that the people living in that apartment come to an agreement locally. Hey, are we going to smoke or not smoke?
Yeah.
And so then that individuals needs to choose, okay, am I going to continue to live here or not? Or I can always move to find an apartment where I can or cannot smoke.
How do you agree upon that?
I mean, this is why, are you asking like technically?
Yeah, technically, like
I think most apartments have some sort of HOA or agreement that you sign upon entering. And so I think the place where I think almost any American would agree, like that community needs to have a guideline or regulation within itself that's well established and people can choose to live there or not. I think they would, myself included, I think, Americans take issue when, let's say, the citywide ban on indoor smoking is instituted.
Yeah.
As a non-smoker, I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it does feel a bit wrong. Like, if they want to smoke indoors and everyone else in that bar is okay with it, why not let them smoke? Why does it have to be a citywide ban, let's say, on indoor smoking?
Yeah. It's tricky. Like, for instance, the vaccination thing, you're almost saying that the government is, you can say the government is kind of like the consensus of, in the apartment analogy, right? We all decided that everyone should get vaccinated.
Okay.
And if you don't want to, you should leave the country. Yeah. Is what you're saying? Because you said if you don't want to live in an apartment that regulates smoking, you should just leave the apartment.
Well, these discussions, by the way, are
Yeah.
interesting to me.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I think, anything taken to extreme is not good either way, right?
Yeah.
Because I could bring up many collectivist things where it's like, how, at an extreme level, a collective society would do this, and you'd probably say that's really bad.
Oh no, I'm not criticizing an individualistic society. I want to understand the exact line.
There's no exact line. And this is
Okay.
why it's interesting. Like every person has their own, they land somewhere on that spectrum. And again, I think for something to reach the point of nationwide agreement on this, let's just bring up the very contentious reproductive rights and abortion.
Yeah.
Right? For whatever, 40, 50 years, abortion was protected across the entire country for 40, 50 years. And with the recent rollback, now it's pushed to the states to decide.
Yeah.
Each state can decide what they want. And the exact nuances of it. Okay, what trimester, what week, under what cases is it or is it not allowed, right? I think that's a very concrete example we can discuss now. Should the whole country as a whole decide this, or should it be a state issue?
Yeah.
And if the state says, hey, we're not going to decide, maybe push it down to the hospital level, right? And every hospital can decide whether we are or aren't going to perform this, right? So I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, I'm just trying to understand the American, because even in individualistic society is on it's on a gradient, right?
Of course, yeah.
So it's not like just one thing that we can categorize into. I'm just trying to understand what the general American thinking of what is my rights that I can claim. Because the vaccination thing was very interesting for Koreans to see. Yeah, because it's almost like common sense that you should abide to this, because we're all in this together, and it's a very specific example where we have to be very collectively cooperating. And then Americans were still claiming that it's their personal rights to not get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is a very tricky issue, right?
Again, vaccines are tricky. I don't think anyone would say they're without risk.
The-
But everyone just agrees the pros outweigh the cons, right?
Yeah, let me be clear. The reason why I really want to understand how Americans think about personal rights is that I think Korea could learn from it. That's why. Yeah. Because Korea is we all know that Korea is on the other extreme where it's very collectivist to the extent of, exposing their movement route to the entire population kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I would agree. I want to say for the record too, one of the reasons we moved to Korea was we just saw how well and orderly they followed things like masking, vaccination, social distancing. It's a very orderly society.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
It's safe as a result of it. So there's so many good things about the more collectivist mindset too. But I think just having grown up in America, by default, my mind is switched in that way.
Yeah.
It's like, don't infringe on my personal rights and freedoms, right? Let me decide what's best for me, myself. And don't force it, right? Let's be very careful with what we put into law and not. Otherwise, things will kind of self-regulate, right? Just imagine a world where there's no ban on indoor smoking. And in my mind, eventually some establishments, bars, restaurants, they would naturally become more smoking or not smoking. And people would know, and they can choose where they go. Now you have issues when there's, let's say, a bar that's known to be non-smoking and someone chooses to light one up. Hey, it's not illegal. What are you going to do about it? Right? And that's where you just have to deal with it on the spot, right? Is that one person going to be so angry and they're going to be so rebellious that they're just going to continue smoking in the face of everyone else? Well, then the other people there can choose to physically escort that person out, right? It comes down to that. And I think it in general, I'd like to say it works itself out, right? Without this high level imposement of what's right, what's wrong, what's legal, what's not.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's so many examples. But gun control is it's a classic one. Individuals' rights to bear arms, but let's not touch that.
Yeah, we're almost at 2 hours now.
Yeah, this part went long. I think we'll need to cut it down.
Yeah,
but it is interesting, I think.
No, this is the main theme that I wanted to tackle. With
where
COVID.
you draw the line.
Yeah.
Okay, June. I think the last part I wanted to talk about related to COVID, what lasting impact do you see today of the pandemic in Korea. And actually, I've not lived in the US. You know, we moved at the very tail end of kind of the COVID situation in the US. So I never lived in the US post-COVID, although I visited here and there. But yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on the impact, and I'll do my best to share my perspective on America. But
one thing that immediately comes to mind is the work culture. Especially working in the tech industry, it was very fortunate for us to, you know, go into remote mode, and which was pretty smooth compared to some other industries, right, where you really have to just be there.
Yeah.
And a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but a substantial amount of Korean companies switched to remote mode and still remains to this day.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah.
That's surprising to me.
Yeah, I know that, like,
because Koreans love going into the office, and
they do. No, they don't.
Really?
They love remote working.
Oh, interesting.
As far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought a lot of Koreans loved going into the office. Maybe it's just always been that way.
From how? Like, why do you think so?
Because everyone seemed excited that they could go back to the office. I don't know. Maybe that's just my sentiment.
Really?
Maybe I just like being in the office.
I think that's just you.
Okay, interesting.
If they can choose, I think 9 out of 10 people would choose to
Remote
work from home. Yeah. I know certain companies like Coupang or Line, Naver, like these big companies, they're still like 100%.
Really?
Almost 100% remote.
So you can choose to work in the office if you want to.
Yeah, I think Naver had like, you can choose a type of work. Like the old type means like the office type, where you have to like at least commute to the office like certain numbers of days in the week or something, or like you can be fully remote.
Yeah. In which case you won't have a physical desk you can get to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Coupang is completely remote too, I think.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
My friends who work there are commuting in every day.
Really? Maybe it depends on the org.
Yeah, maybe. Where do you fall on the remote versus in person? Like, what do you prefer?
I prefer one or the other. I don't like it when there's like one day that you work remotely or a week.
Really? Yeah.
Because like if the norm is that you work from office and you give one day that you can work remotely, people will take it as like kind of like a day off kind of.
Oh, I see.
Whichever way that you want it to, I think you should establish that as a norm, and like create all the systems
to make
around
that as efficient as possible.
Yeah.
Very consistent with the Jun I know. Yeah. You're always like, pick a lane. I am literally the exact opposite. I think the ideal situation is hybrid.
Yeah.
So I'd say 2 days or 3 days in, 2 days, 3 days at home. Because I think there is a class of work that is so much better in person.
Yeah.
Namely meetings and back and forth conversation. And there's a class of work that is so much better done on your own and being able to focus and not have distractions.
I agree. I agree with that. But I don't like that weird situation where like, okay, 8 out of the 10 like very important members who should be in the meeting is in office, and then 2 are not.
So I believe the best situation is there are in office days.
Yeah.
Let's say Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
They are work from home days.
Yeah.
And so to avoid that.
But so everyone should, it can't be individual.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. But anyway, I think for me, that was also, work during COVID for me was hyper productive at first.
Yeah.
Right? Because maybe plans had been made, it was just execution.
Yeah. Everyone went through phases.
Yeah, less meetings, whatever. And then it got to be like planning cycle. Or like one day you just realize, that person's no longer at the company. And you didn't even realize it, right? And that's when I realized, in the short term, remote work might be great or a boon to productivity. But in the long term, at least for me, it felt really negative actually for overall impact.
Yeah.
And I landed at the place where I think it would be great if there was a hybrid situation permanently. But
speaking of remote home, working from home culture, you know what I found very fascinating, which is kind of like the opposite of the America that I know, because I worked in both an American company and a Japanese company and a Korean company during COVID. The one thing that is very different in American companies is that if you are having a meeting remotely via Zoom or whatever, I don't know if it's like that specific company culture or an American company culture, but they all have their cameras on.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas it is very taboo in Korea to force everyone to turn their cameras on.
See, I don't know why that is.
And the reason why I think it's kind of opposite is that isn't that an individual right to not be on the camera?
Yeah, I think if
that is kind of like a very Korean thing to like force everyone to turn on their cameras.
To turn on their cameras.
Yeah.
So to be clear, I don't think it's forced. I think it's...
But it's very kind of like, it's nuanced in a way that...
Yeah. But okay.
You feel pressure not to turn your camera on.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's not enforced. And I think if anyone turns... For example, I never felt... I would always have my camera on by default, but I never felt weird turning it off. Let's say something was happening in the room or I need to step away.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think twice to turn it off. Yeah. There's no like stigma.
But why was the default to turn the camera on?
Because the whole point of, I think communication is so much better when you can see each other's faces. There's so much communication that's non-verbal. Plus, it's just nice. I don't know. It's good to see other people's faces when you're working.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think those interpersonal relationships and dynamics, once I started realizing how quickly they eroded with full remote work, that's when I realized, no, we need some in-person synchronous time.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about getting the work done. It's, it's done so much more efficiently in the long term, let's say, when you actually build some rapport with your teammates, at least in my mind. So.
I think certain collaborative works are much better to collaborate in person, but like in work that is very individual, that you have to just like crank it out on your own, it's much better remote. Like
I agree. That the focused IC type work. I mean, I'm honestly on the other end where I can't imagine a VC meeting where everyone turns their cameras off.
That was a norm for the Korean companies.
Isn't that so? To me, that's so weird. Like, can you pay attention? Sorry, the speaker must have their camera on, right?
I think no.
What?
Well, this is my theory.
It's just an audio only remote meeting.
This is my theory. It has a lot to do with how like in Korean society, especially for women, you have to be presented like in a very immaculate way with your makeup on. But if you're at home, you just don't put your makeup on, right?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I understand. Like, my answer to that is just everyone knows you're not wearing makeup, so just who cares? But
because I know that at least a lot of my female coworkers, they turn on like the makeup filter on.
Okay, I get it.
On Zoom, if they turn on their camera on. So I thought maybe that's one of the factors that they don't want to turn it on.
I mean, look, America has the corollaries too, right? Yeah. So, of course, we have blur background filters or whatever. Yeah. And, the meme is like you only dress halfway up, like what's going to be visible on the camera. Yeah. I don't know. It seems so cold and off-putting to imagine a whole VC meeting with no cameras on, especially the speakers. Yeah. See, I thought you were going to say something like, oh, in Korean meetings, maybe only one or two people talk in general. And so if you're just a passive consumer, it's fine to turn off the camera, actually. Yeah. But in most of the meetings I'm in, I think most people are talking throughout the meeting. So it's kind of awkward, like camera on, camera off, right? While you're talking only. So just keep it on the whole time. Also, I think so much of it is like, I don't know. I know the Zoom implemented like raise hand features or whatever, like I want to talk next. Yeah. But it's so much easier to just be like, hey, I'm going to talk. Like, oh, I see Jun wants to talk. Let me, mute myself. And Jun, why don't you take over, right? Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine meetings without the camera on. Of course, the HR required meetings where it's just like one person giving a dry presentation. Even then, most people were cameras on. But I could imagine a world where if they said, okay, if you're fine, I'm fine with everyone turning the camera off. Most people would because you're just passively consuming content. Yeah. But if you're actually involved in the meeting, it's so much better to have it on. You can see people's expressions. Anyway. That's my feeling.
What are some other lasting impacts on society other than work culture?
Definitely in the US, right? Return to work is a very contentious thing. Yeah. Where I think, just like Korea, it sounds like a lot of companies are still full remote. But they're starting to institute return to work policies, even in 2025 today. Yeah. So finally, 4 years after the pandemic, they're starting to require people to come back to the office. I think the second big thing for me that stands out, again, I haven't lived in the US for 3.5 years now, but I just lost track of life, right? Like this sounds crazy, but because of remote work, so much changed. People moved states, people moved to other places, people got married, had kids, and I just don't know. Yeah. And I think COVID definitely played a big part in like accelerating that because just so many things change and it's hard to keep up now with who's where, what's going on.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I don't know as much of what's going on in the world, and with my social groups.
Yeah.
And it feels like a bit of a reset, to be honest. Like if there wasn't COVID, I could imagine a lot more friends and family. Like I would know exactly what's going on in their life. But because of COVID, it felt like a bit of a social reset for me. Where it's like, if I haven't talked to you pre-COVID, like, or since COVID, I have no freaking clue what's going on with you. And right. And it kind of interrupted that for me, I would say.
I see.
So I still feel like I haven't recovered. Like there's still people in my life that I wish I knew more about. But, and maybe I can't put all the blame on COVID, but it does at least feel like it played a big part in destroying that, let's say, general social fabric of relationships. And yeah, I think for me, it wasn't as isolating because we had my family at home, and then we still had enough social interactions with people in the US before moving here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that first year in Korea was very difficult. We couldn't even go out as a family easily. We were stuck inside. And yeah, it was really, really challenging. And I wonder, I mean, my question for you, Jun, because modern Korea, my impression is it's kind of self-isolating. Like people aren't as social.
Yeah.
The social circles have gotten very small. Has it always been this way, or did COVID kind of like push that even further along?
I think we were definitely on that trajectory, but COVID definitely accelerated it. Yeah. For instance, like, I mean, this is one aspect of social interaction, but you know how Korea used to like dip into the same soup when you're like communally eating? I think that like quickly just went away.
Oh, really?
And but it was going to that direction anyways, right? I think it was going to go away anyways, but it definitely, like COVID definitely helped accelerate that trend.
I still do it. Maybe I don't eat many meals outside with non-family though. I think we share the same. Like just dip into the communal chicken. Yeah.
With who?
Friends.
With friends?
Maybe not. Maybe we do pour into a soup bowl.
I think with it depends how close you are. I think with my close friends, I still do. Yeah. But like at a work context, we definitely...
You have the manner.
Yeah.
젓가락, or you ladle into your bowl.
매너 젓가락, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
But socially, you think Korea was already on this trajectory? This just pushed it further?
I think so.
I think finally the third one I'll bring up for me and I think some of my friends, and this is very personal, right? Like I'm in Korea. I would not have moved here if it weren't for COVID.
Yeah.
I think it forced people to really evaluate things like, where am I living and why? Where am I working and why?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of life, and what am I optimizing for? And if it weren't for COVID, I think everyone would just kept going along the path they were on, right? Slaving away, let's say, at work, living in the place close to work where they can make the most money. But because of COVID, it really forced people to really stop and think and evaluate their priorities. And it's like once you detach work, let's say, also from where you live, anything's possible, right? Oh, we can live near family, but still work for the same company remotely. We can live in a different country, but still work for the same company, let's say. Or it's like, hey, actually, what's important to me is, I don't know, maybe where I live is more important than where I work. And so I'm going to, make work a lesser priority. I'm going to move somewhere closer to family and I'll find a new job, whatever it might be. So I think in that sense, it was good in that it really forced you to really evaluate like whatever path in life you were on.
Yeah.
I think about a lot, like if it weren't for COVID, what would my life look like today? In a lot of ways, it would be very similar, but in many ways, it would be very, very different. And I quite frankly appreciate kind of where I am at now. So
cool.
Yeah.
It's not like a lasting impact on society per se, but I think perception towards the world has changed a bit in a way that I think before, maybe it's just me, or it could be the general perception towards the Western world. So I think for a long time, I think the default was that, the Western world is so civilized, they're more developed, like everything that they do might be better. I think it's the first time where everyone witnessed the bare reality of what actually is, right? That they are like,
they have their own problems.
So chaotic, like things go out of hand.
Yeah.
and they're not perfect either. And there are like pros and cons of different types of societies, rather than they're just like advanced in everything.
Yeah.
I think that's like one huge impact that left on me personally in terms of like viewing the world kind of. Yeah.
Wait, Jun, I have a very pointed question. If so many companies in Korea are still remote, fully remote, why hasn't there been an exodus out of Seoul, let's say? Like, why wouldn't you live on the East Coast, like Gangnam or Sokcho? Like, that's a beautiful place to live. It's cheaper. Why not just move there and work from there? Because I don't see that happening in Korea, right? Or is it? And I don't know.
I have about 3 thoughts.
Okay.
Number one, I think it's because the companies who have the luxury of doing fully remote are only limited to specific sectors like tech. So it's not majority of the population. Number two, it's because of the real estate thing, right? You want to buy a property somewhere in the Seoul metropolitan area rather than like, it's kind of like giving up and like, peace out, I'm just going to live somewhere else.
I see.
Number three, there are certain people who are doing that, but not a lot.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's number two though? Because again, my understanding is a lot of people don't live where they own. So you think of where you purchase as an investment, but then you might choose to live or rent somewhere else.
Yeah.
So why is that coupled still?
That's an interesting question. Maybe still they want to live in education plays a big factor, I think, too.
For their kids, let's say.
Yeah. And I think because Korea is a very soul-centric country, so it's not only about, it's about everything related to the infrastructure of learning, may it be education, culture, food, whatever. Everything is just in Seoul. So the advantages that you can get from living outside, I think is very specific. And there's definitely a trade-off, right? If you live in like Sokcho, you might live with like great scenery, good air, which is
and
kind
cheaper
of
rent, right?
Cheaper
For
rent,
sure.
yeah. But then you have to give up like education, like culture, whatever is happening in Seoul.
I see.
So, yeah.
But maybe I'm overestimating how many people can remote work. I think, US it's much more widespread maybe.
Yeah.
Even like government positions are remote. Like
Really?
Yeah. So I think it's not just limited to tech. Yeah.
But my friends who are working in tech, they definitely do take advantage of the fact that they can work remotely.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it's also limiting their choice of work then. If you design your entire life around the premise of remote work, then you can't really move to another job. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe what I was trying to get at too, Jun, is everyone in Korea expects it to end at some point.
Remote work?
Yeah. Whereas in the US, it almost felt like there were so many articles coming out and the general consensus was, no, remote work is here to stay forever. Like we are no longer coupling who you work for and where you live. And so people felt maybe more empowered to make these moves. Whereas in Korea, it always felt like, as a collectivist society, all the companies are going to eventually require in-person again. So we're not going to shift our lives entirely around this change.
I don't think so, because the companies that are still doing remote work, very early on, they announced that this is going to be permanent. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
In a sense, it's good for companies that they don't have to have as much real estate investment, right?
Yeah.
So it's like people are now, their homes are where their office is. It's good in a lot of ways there. But anyway, what was the hardest thing about the COVID era for you?
The hardest thing for me is to deal with the overall atmosphere of the society.
Oh,
Everything shut down. Like I really like the lively environment when I go outside, where like businesses are running, like people are excited, like we're walking around the district, like new businesses popping up here and there. That kind of atmosphere is what I really love. But in the COVID era, it's like so depressing. Yeah. Everything was shut down. No one outside in the streets. Businesses are always limited. Yeah.
We heard that as well, like La Street. Maybe we'll cut that specific part out. But the little walkway near our homes, we always hear, it was so much better pre-COVID. It was so much better pre-COVID.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's recovered yet. And then the other example I'll bring up is, those big shopping districts in Seoul, like Myeongdong, for example.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it only just really bounced back in the last year. Yeah, I think even 2 years ago, it was dead compared to its peak.
Exactly.
But now I feel like it's fully back, finally.
It was so depressing during COVID era, or even like right after the COVID era. Walking past the Myeongdong district was so depressing. It almost felt like a ghost town.
It really did.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the hardest parts for me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, because we didn't even know that it's going to bounce back
Yeah,
right
exactly.
now.
Yeah.
So, oh, is this the end of like
Nightlife.
physical,
Yeah.
physical city life? Yeah. What about you?
The hardest part? I don't know. Nothing comes to mind other than what I've already shared. I think just maybe losing some of the social fabric of my life.
Yeah.
But if anything, in the US, right, when most people have homes, a little bit more space, maybe a yard.
Yeah.
The whole lockdown era it didn't feel like as isolating as we felt like when we first moved to Seoul, I'll say.
I see.
So maybe that was the hardest part, that initial move here, and just how isolating it was until the restrictions lifted.
Okay.
I have a more lighthearted one though.
Yeah.
Did you ever have what did you do for haircuts during COVID?
It was very different.
Oh,
yeah.
Could you just go to the hair salon still? Masked up and get a cut?
Yeah.
No, really?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, I mean, in the US, I don't think haircuts were seen as, what is it called? What was the specific term? God, what's the term? Anyway, yeah, in the US, I'm pretty sure haircuts was not in the essential services bucket. So, I mean, I grew up my hair. It was crazy. It was the longest it's ever been, almost down to my shoulders. So I had COVID hair. And then I remember cutting all our kids' hair in the bathroom, like every month or two at home. So I gave all our kids their haircuts.
I see. I don't think hair salons were ever shut down in Korea.
Yeah, they were shut down in the US.
They had a very clever way to cut your hair while having your mask on.
Oh, really? Oh, they flipped it around. Yeah,
some did that.
The ear thing.
Some had like custom-made masks where it had like adhesives.
Yeah, adhesives
on the mask, so you can just like put it on without the band thing. Yeah.
But if anything, I will look back on those things very fondly. I think that was probably one of the more fond things I'll recall about COVID. Just being together in the house. Of course, it's a bit stir crazy and difficult to manage work and stuff. But yeah, I mean, we got really close as a family. And yeah, specifically haircuts. I don't know. It's not something I do anymore. But just being able to, it's kind of intimate, right? Cutting your kids' hair and asking them how they want it. And yeah, it was kind of fun. Yeah. And definitely, I've never had so many wacky hairstyles because you're just literally standing in your bathroom, like buzz cutting your own hair off. Kind of felt really weird, but everyone was doing it, so it didn't feel too bad. As always, if you'd like to support this content, please share us with a friend or a colleague that might enjoy it. That's the best thing you can do to support us. Additionally, if you want to become a Patreon, you can get access to our exclusive Discord. We can discuss the recent episode, propose future episode topics, or just in general talk. The K-drama channel in our Discord is becoming quite active. So yeah, since last recording, we've had 3 new Patreons. First off, thank you to Ren.
Thank you, Ren.
Thank you to Jiang.
Thank you, Jiang.
And thank you to Patricia, who raised up their membership significantly.
I wonder what triggered them to do that. But thank you.
Yeah, that's it for this episode. Finally, we tackled COVID, which was, again, such a catalyst in my life for many changes. And it ultimately culminated, I think, in us meeting and starting this podcast. So I'm glad to tackle it.
All right.
Thank you. See you next week.
But then if I go back again, well, that doesn't make sense. Anyways, sorry. Hey, Google, turn on the living room lights.
Oh.
Okay. So at the time,
lights offline.
Yeah. So this goes into our bloopers.
It is really coming down.
Do you think you can walk back? Do you drive here?
No, I can walk. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Without an umbrella.
Yeah. If you were Korean, I would offer you to.
I still think it's goofy when I see people walking. I see everyone walking around with their umbrellas. I still think it's goofy.
Even in this weather?
It's just snow.